diri diriba lukumpiai lukuni piam piam lukumpiai lukudiri diriba lukumpiai lukuni piam 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 lukumpiai lukudiri diriba lukumpiai lukuni piam piam lukumpiai lukudiri diriba lukumpiai lukuni piam.
State House is a big house, or so suggest some pictures emerging out of Kenya's seat of power, where an unlikely meeting, first denied and later accepted as fact, actually took place. Gideon Moi is finally in President Ruto's fold. And I'm being presumptive here. We have pictures from State House. Now, across the border, activist Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo are still missing, and the Ugandan authorities are saying they do not have them. We conduct a cross-border lie detector test. Back home, it is a stargazing moment for our youth as the government rolls out the Nyota program. Now, Nyota stands for National Youth Opportunities Towards Advancement. We assess the launch. And the education sector is going through some fresh turbulence as the lecturers' strike enters its fourth week. How will it end? We have that question. Later on our final words, Kai Kai's kicker questions the missing merit in national awards. Sam Sens assesses the gap between the youth and the voter register. On Jamila's memo, it is safer to campaign in eastern Uganda than in Kampala if you're a Kenyan. Just ask C.S. Murkomen and activist Bob Njagi. On my take, hey Kiambu, this is not a laughing matter. The gang is here and Bonyo's Bone is on a break tonight. Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Let's start by talking about the events. Were they today or yesterday? They were actually today, and finally we get confirmation of it today. And this is what I'm talking about. If we can just play those clips on the screen. Perhaps what some would consider an unlikely meeting. These two have not been chums politically for quite some time. And here they are now at State House. That's Gideon Moi from Kano. And President William Ruto, who's the party leader of UDA. And of course, this is on the backdrop of, by-elections that are taking place. So first, Sam, set the context for us here. This meeting happening now, at a time, why is this important or significant at this point?
Right. Of course, we have a by-election or by-elections on the 27th of November in 24 areas, all the way from MCA to constituency and then Senate. And Senate is the Baringo senatorial by-election, where you're looking for the successor of William Cheptumo, who died early in the year. And of course, just a few days or weeks ago, we heard from the Kano chairperson, Gideon Moi, declaring that he's going to run for the seat. This is a seat that he held up until 2022, representing that county as its senator. And everyone was looking forward to see what sort of a contest would there be, because back in 2022, he was unable to deal with the UDA wave that carried William Cheptumo to the office. Now you have a fairly younger politician nominated to take over. And then just on the eve of presentation of these papers, you hear that there's a meeting going on at State House. I have to say here, I think this is the first time, at least publicly, you are seeing the Kano leadership meeting at State House, because you can see Gideon Moi there. The last time we saw Gideon Moi in State House in a public event, or something that was communicated publicly, was during the leadership of Uhuru Kenyatta. As for him to appear there, and then end up withdrawing from the Baringo senatorial race, because that's what we'll assume, because he didn't present his papers. It is quite shocking because of the build-up that was. And you could see some of the supporters of KANU party and also Gideon Moi already on the ground waiting for him to come and present his papers. We heard from Masman Kamama, who is a former member of parliament, expressing himself that they're still waiting for him to leave Kabrak and make his way. And there's something that he said, that we are hoping there will be no roadblocks on the way for Gideon Moi, and he'll be allowed to get to, is it Cabernet?
Cabernet
Town.
Yeah.
Yes, to make the presentation of, there's another Cabernet in Nairobi.
Yeah,
so,
not the gardens.
yes, not Cabernet Gardens, but Cabernet in Baringo. Yeah. So really, so it appears that he's no longer interested in that seat, at least for this season. But it's also not surprising because William Kamket, who is one of the few members of parliament on it's confusing, on KANU party, has been working, what is it, leaders? Has been working with William Ruto's party, UDA. He's been very clear, even saying that it's actually possible to even extend the leadership of William Ruto to 24 years.
And he's a close ally of Gideon Moi.
Exactly, a very close ally of Gideon Moi. He actually suffered a bit during the run-up to 2022 elections, but shortly after the election, he crossed over to go and work with President William Ruto. So looking at this, quite shocking, surprising, but still not surprising, knowing that there has been a lot of undertones, political undertones. Of course, you will see that Baringo elected majority of the seats went to UDA party. So what would it have been if Gideon Moi was to run in this race and win? What would it mean for KANU versus UDA in such a critical election, knowing that Baringo County is important? President William Ruto lost the senator. The spouse of the senator is now cabinet secretary within the government of William Ruto. So what message could it have sent? But also on the question of how politics happen at State House, I think it's quite fascinating, and it's also not the first time that you're seeing this. And even if people may complain that they were left out of that decision, you will remember that a lot of decisions have been made in a meeting with William Ruto without involving the people.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Shortly after the general election in 2022, the UDM party was in Azimio, and very quickly shifted allegiance and decided to work with William Ruto. The leader of that party, I think, is Ali Roba, the senator of Mandera. Around that time, David Ochieng, who leads the MDG party as a sole member of parliament, moved very quickly to work with the leadership of William Ruto. Now, shortly after that, perhaps a year later, you find, not even a year, it's about 6 or so months, you saw a conversation starting to happen between William Ruto and Raila Odinga. And eventually a decision was made to work with Raila Odinga, William Ruto and Raila Odinga back in 2024. It is not a meeting that necessarily involved everyone. The people came at the end after saying that they brought me some papers and I told them that I have to go and consult the people. That was early this year. Also, the meeting in Ishaweri of Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, there are no consultations of members of the Jubilee Party. You just see the meeting, then thereafter you see the action taking place. So we hope to see what then this means for Gideon Moi, but also KANU. I would imagine there's some very interesting things that we should be seeing in the coming days and weeks.
And like you talk about the idea of consultation, of course, there was a bit of hostility on the ground because there were Gideon Moi's supporters who were ready to stand by him. But Jamila, his supporters were not the only ones who were seemingly blindsided by this move.
In fact, the question is, was this a Gideon Moi decision or a KANU decision? And it's clearly looking like it was a Gideon Moi decision. I'm saying that because of a post on social media by one of the members of parliament from KANU, Naisula Lisuda from Samburu, who actually is talking about how she says, my only concern, and of many who have believed in you and the party, is your choice not to give direction and not to communicate on time of your decisions. We feel not listened to, not heard or felt, especially the felt part. Chairman, address your supporters of your decision, lead with empathy, and carry us along. That's a political leader. Yeah. But you've mentioned how the people also themselves, and it was really chaotic today, because there were hundreds of supporters who were actually waiting for him at the Cabernet airstrip in their borders. And some of the things they're saying, no Gideon, no elections. So to them, what you mentioned, Gituku, that he should not be blocked from getting there. There was that thought that huenda akakatazwa. One, is it because Gideon Moi is really a threat to the UDA candidate in Baringo? Because it's very important for the UDA candidate to win in Baringo, because hiyo ni backyard, the president. So was Gideon Moi really a threat? Because he had clearly announced that he was going to run. There were posters, there were banners in Baringo announcing that he was running for this seat, and people expecting him to present his papers. Those distraught supporters who were there, they had gathered in anticipation. They were ready to escort him. It was going to be this whole spectacle of him being escorted by his supporters in borders. There was a whole convoy to take him to present his papers. But then now, for them, they did not know about this other intrigues of a meeting between him and the president, and leading to him deciding to withdraw. Because for them, they were worried, anaweza kuwa amezuiwa. Why? Because he's probably a threat. And then what happens again? The anger now is directed towards the UDA candidate, Vincent Chemitei, who was going to present his nomination papers. He actually had to be airlifted by chopper for 2 kilometers, for a 2-kilometer journey to the IBC offices. And then apparently the aircraft was pelted with stones. There was a story that was done by Emmanuel To. Several vehicles were vandalized. I think we are seeing them on air, and there was a whole melee. So the whole thing was, why is Gideon Moi not presenting his papers? Yeah. For them, it was nothing to do with his meeting with President Moi. For them, it was all about Pengine anazuio to present his papers. Yeah. We want him to run. Maybe he has a chance to win. So all these political intrigues really, Yvonne, makes me wonder how, as voters, who are tunapangiwa in boardrooms, in meetings. I know Gituku is going to talk a bit more about that in his final word, but we're not actually being given a chance to decide for ourselves. Right. Because imepangwa kule, aka withdraw dakika ya mwisho, his supporters are upset. For them, their reasons were very different from what eventually we are seeing. But now, it seems this was a Gideon Moi decision, not a Kanu decision. Yeah, and the question as to whether this was a personal decision or a party decision, and perhaps one that's taken as a prominent member of the party, what does this mean significantly? Maybe looking at the bigger picture of two people who have not seen eye to eye. It is public knowledge that the president did not see eye to eye with former President Moi, and of course with the son thereafter. Are we reading too much into this meeting? What could it portend? Is it a final thawing of relations between the two? Or what would you say about this meeting today and the significance of it, considering the history that these two gentlemen have had?
It's Moi Day tomorrow.
Mazingira.
Yeah. Oh, it's Mazingira Day.
Mazingira. Also, the age is showing, but that's fine. Yeah. For those of us who know it as Moi Day, a certain age bracket. But yeah, nice one. Well,
and this is a significant moment, especially for the relations, and you rightly put it there, relations between President Ruto and the Moi family. Towards the end of his life, we had a lot of stories about the broken relations between the former president and the current president. There were suggestions even that he tried to visit him, and he was not granted audience. Yet this president actually owes his beginnings, his political career, to former President Daniel Arap Moi, the late Daniel Arap Moi, having started out as a youth activist in the university, and then going on to become a member of the infamous Youth for Kanu 92 group, which campaigned for Moi in 1992, and also had great beginnings in many things, including wealth and all that. Yeah. But this is a moment where we can also talk of possible mending of relations. But I see a lot of politics in it as well. By-elections are taken very seriously by serving governments, because by-elections have sometimes been used, actually have historically been used, to embarrass government. Show that the government is losing popularity, or some new forces are emerging. And so I think President Ruto had to take this race very seriously, for the reasons that some you are painting there. If Gideon Moi ran and actually won the seat, the senatorial seat of Baringo, the optics will not be good for President Ruto. And you can see a similar amount of effort have been put in other by-elections. Remember Banisa, where the lead candidate suddenly
Changes sides.
changes sides, because government is trying everything to make sure it wins the by-elections, because by-elections can leave an egg in your political egg in your face. Back, I think, in 1995, there was a famous by-election in Kipipiri. President Moi was then in office, and he had actually thought his party, KANU, would win once in that region that had voted for Dasili. And government put a lot of effort there, including actually sending electricity poles, dropping them on the roads, and promising the people of Kipipiri that there will be electricity immediately after the election. Mwangi Gideon won that election over the KANU candidate by, of course, a comfortable margin. And the next day, the electricity poles were collected
Because
and taken back. Governments take by-elections very seriously because by-elections can be embarrassing. Way back in the 60s, the little general election of 1969, Bildad Kagia, who was President Jomo Kenyatta's constant cause of embarrassment, was up for re-election in Kandara. President Jomo Kenyatta, who rarely traveled, personally went to Kandara to campaign against Bildad Kagia. So for those reasons, you will see that the government will not just invest in the Baringo by-election, but also in these other by-elections. I think at some point we can talk about the Mbere North Ruku's seat, which is also quite a contest, because the one thing governments don't want to see is that kind of embarrassment that comes from by-elections.
Yeah, and you're right. That's why you see he has personally received all of the candidates who've now been cleared by IEBC, personally meeting them at State House to, give encouragement. And I suppose that speaks to that issue. So as we like to say, we wait and see what happens, Sam?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that if you look at how the president has been dealing with some of these opponents or potential opponents, then you find that he's either a current or a former of some of those political parties. How he dealt with the ODM, he's a former. He says actually he's a founding member of ODM. How he dealt with Jubilee MPs, he is a founder of the Jubilee Party. How he has dealt with DCP candidates who are formerly of UDA. And at the same time, today's, or is it yesterday's meeting at State House was a meeting of the KANU chairman and the former Secretary General of KANU. Yeah,
indeed.
In the name of William Ruto.
That just tells you.
I mean, we read too much into parties, and some I think when you couldn't place Kamket in, who is my friend, in any party, this is the situation. So I saw somewhere, I think Kenyans are really creative. There was a drawing of a yellow cockerel.
Okay.
Yeah, following that.
Well, that's behind you, or is it behind Jamila? But
it's there in the shot, actually.
Is that there?
Well, it's not quite yellow, but we tried not to. We're a bit
badlishes.
Yes.
Yeah, so President Ruto resigned from the position of Secretary General KANU on the 6th of October, 2007. It's a good anniversary, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and tomorrow is Moi Day, as we say. Okay. Yeah, interesting. Now, I want us to talk about something else. There was this event that took place today. Activists from Kenya and Uganda marching to the Ugandan High Commission to petition the Ugandan authorities to produce 2 activists who were abducted, went missing in Uganda a few days ago. Is it now over a week? Bob Njagi and
9 days.
Oyo. Yeah. Again, here we are. We've witnessed, abductions in Kenya, abductions of Kenyans in Tanzania, and now abductions in Uganda. I think what strikes me and what's difficult about this for me is Bob Njagi has had a rough year. It was just this year that he was abducted for a month. His whereabouts were unknown in Kenya. This cannot be easy. This must be very distressing. Again, they were invited by Bobi Wine to be part of his campaign. They were sighted there and then went missing 9 days ago. Authorities in Uganda say, we don't have him, we don't know where he is. Again, a sad state of affairs with this one, Sam. Just putting East African relations into sharp focus. The election in Uganda is in February. There's an election in Tanzania as well.
End of this month, yes.
This month. But here we are again with another abduction. I cannot imagine what pain it is for the families. It's one thing to be abducted here and not have whereabouts known. It's another in a foreign country. And even though the Foreign Affairs Ministry says they're in touch with the authorities in Uganda and doing what it takes to try and get these 2 Kenyans back home. It seems like abduction has been the word of the year.
It's extremely sad that we belong to one community, and more than a week later, we're still grappling with, we don't know where he is. I saw the statement from the police service in Uganda of them saying no such a thing has been reported to them. They don't have him. They don't know where he is. And then I wondered, even if that is the correct position according to the police service, what are the authorities doing? Knowing too well that there are even images of the last time that Bob and Nicholas were seen, though in the company of Ugandan citizens. And if we are serious about the community that we are in as East African community and the many agencies that we have or the arms that we have, I mean, how serious can it get when you cannot account for a citizen of this community? And even as the Kenyan authorities continue to inquire, I saw a statement during the funeral of Dalmas Otieno last week in Migori, and I think it was Babu Owino who was calling on the Prime Cabinet Secretary to make a call to President Museveni and talk about Bob Njagi and Nicholas. We don't know whether that has happened, but then it's a very ugly picture that we still call ourselves a community. But then again, you wonder, if Kenyan authorities could do the same to their own citizens, what can our foreign friends do? Remember the case of Boniface Mwangi,
and Agatha,
who had been in trouble. He has really suffered in the hands of Kenyan authorities, but at the same time now suffered in the hands of the Tanzanian authorities. And even when statements came from there, you don't see a lot of regret or remorse coming from the leadership of the East African community. So one hopes that there can be serious conversations about such kind of things. And when even the presidents meet in the Summit of East African Community, or even the legislative arm meets, you can only hope that there are conversations about what is democracy, what is freedom of movement, what does the articles in our respective constitutions about being held without trial mean, or being presented in court mean. Obviously, knowing too well that all this has been happening at a time that the opposition leader, Kizza Besigye, is in trouble. Is it Tundu Lissu in Tanzania? So what exactly are we doing as East African community with democracy?
Yeah, and Jamila, it's not just Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo, for whom it must be distressing and still nothing. But like we're talking about East Africa, Tanzania is also... There's been, a few abductions there as well. Yeah.
The most recent one is a former ambassador to Tanzanian ambassador to Cuba, Ambassador Polepole, who was abducted a few years ago. He was appointed by the CCM and he was ambassador in Cuba for a while. But then in the recent months, he's been quite vocal against the president of the presidency and the government of Mama Samia Suluhu, and then suddenly he disappears. His family has been going around police stations. His mother has spoken out. His brother has spoken out, saying that if he's dead, give him to us so we can bury him. Of course, the government has not spoken about this in terms of now where he is. And I think today their family was going to court to try and compel the government to use him. And if when you talk at how this is happening, not just in Uganda and in Tanzania also, even speaking about Oyo and Njagi. Because when you talk about Ambassador Polepole, he's a former ambassador, he's someone who has been in that space. But what would having Njagi and Oyo at a meeting where Bobi Wine is going to present his nomination papers make a difference in the Ugandan elections? Let them come, wafike, wafanye whatever they're doing and let them leave. And I'll talk a bit more about this in my memo, but we had our CS for Interior, Kipchumba Murkomen, and other colleagues in government across the border to Sebei and campaign for Yoweri Museveni and NRM party. And one of the things that they said was that mupige kura hapa in Uganda for President Museveni, and then in 2027 cross over and come to Kenya and vote for President William Ruto. They went, did their campaigns there for Museveni and came back and nothing happened to them. And Kipchumba Murkomen is the CS who's supposed to be following up and finding out where is Oyo and where is Njagi. And if you ask me, the commitment or the action by the Kenya government so far on this is almost lackluster. Because I just remember one statement by him saying that we are following up.
Right.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is following up. So what else? Because they've been, I think every single day since they disappeared, we've had maandamano, we've had statements from families, from human rights organizations. Today they went all the way to the Ugandan High Commission to protest about it. It was closed because Uganda is celebrating Independence Day today, but they left a statement. Nothing is being done on this end. These are Kenyans. Whatever the circumstances they're there, these are Kenyans. Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo are Kenyans, and we need to do a bit more, try and find out how they are. In Tanzania, we are witnessing that. We've seen Ambassador Pole Pole. Of course, you talk about Tundu Lissu. There was another candidate also who's been kept out of the presidential race. And she's been very vocal against anyone who's critical of her. But we're seeing something different in Tanzania, Yvonne, as I finish. There's a bit more now conversations online. And also a few pockets of protests here and there against what is going on, especially with the abductions. Abductions have been a big deal in Kenya. Remember, after last year, abductions, how many people have disappeared, how many have died. We are trying now to form to compensate them. That one is also hanging in the balance because of what we are seeing. But abducting people for just speaking out is a big deal, Yvonne. And you're starting to see those pockets of resistance here and there because of what we're seeing.
Linus, do we have enough outrage? Do you feel the outrage of, the disappearance of Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo? Sometimes I fear that with every new case of abduction we hear, we get numb to this, and, we shake our heads and tisk, and then we move on. Do we have enough of that pressure, do you think?
No, we don't. We have it at the level of, unfortunately, family. Family feels the families and relatives are obviously going through very difficult times. And then the activists have been keeping the message up. You remember they had a demo today to the Ugandan embassy. At official level, quite frankly, it's tongue-in-cheek. We had government saying, we've asked the Ugandan government to tell us where they are. Really? Really? I mean, this is the same administration that did something unthinkable, handing over the leader of official opposition in Uganda. I describe him as such because he's a very senior senior opposition figure. I don't know where the nerves came from in this country that you could actually do that without thinking of the implications, without also thinking of who we are. I mean, Kenya is supposed to be the beacon of democracy in the region. We sometimes, actually many times, think we are ahead of other countries in the region. But we can't be ahead if we can do something as primitive as handing over a leader of opposition of the level of Kizza Besigye to Ugandan authorities. They came here to Riverside Drive. And Ugandan police actually conducted a security operation on Kenyan soil. I think what we are losing is pride. National pride is disappearing, which is why I think in official circles, Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo are very small because we are no longer that country that really appreciates what national pride is all about, where we sit in the international affairs. We are growing smaller and smaller because as Bob Njagi and Oyo are disappearing in the west, that is in Kampala, Our CS Interior is campaigning in the east, conducting a Kenyan-like campaign in the east, Jamila. Yeah, in the east of Uganda.
So why is he campaigning for the president of another country?
Yes, what are we doing? Yes, it's just that we are starting to really lose some of those things. And there are things that are taught in school, but there's something that is also supposed to be natural wisdom and leadership that has to be exercised in terms of how a nation conducts itself. I think increasingly our neighbors do not respect us because they think, I mean, if they can collect Kisa Besige from Riverside, who can they not collect from anywhere? And remember our weak reactions to the arrest of Boniface Mwangi in Tanzania. We are so held back by our internal politics, so much so that you now have, people in government who have allies elsewhere, and they're happy that Uganda is sorting out the opposition internally. That is smallness, and that's really shameful. Yet you can see how the globe is becoming complex. Diplomacy is a game of who can see bigger pictures. But we are playing in a really small league. Look around the region. We are having our neighbors that are emerging quite strong. And I'm not talking about Uganda and Tanzania. I'm talking about nations that really know what relations with other nations are about, what national interest looks like, what they need to do for their nations to be strong. I think we can't campaign in Eastern Uganda and have our citizens who are campaigning in Western Uganda arrested because they're not campaigning for the people you are campaigning for in Eastern Uganda.
That's right.
Yeah.
Both places are interior, right?
The interior of Uganda, right?
But here's the thing, every life should matter. And it would be important for every Kenyan to feel like, as a citizen of this nation, their country has their back, and whatever they do, wherever, that their government would stand up for them and ensure they get back home. We're not seeing that with them.
And I should just mention that internationally and regionally, there are laws that are used. If you have people that need to be handed over to their country of origin for prosecution, then there are clear extradition processes, legal and even Ochuka, who was a coup plotter, who had conducted a coup attempt here, went through the process in Tanzania.
Right.
Even though Julius Nyerere could just have put him in a pro box, or they didn't exist then, and bring him here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we want to hand over Besigye, let's go through the honor of respecting our flag, respecting our boundaries, arrest him with our Kilimani police, not Ugandan police in Riverside. Take him to court. Yeah, take him to court. Let the extradition process start, and we hand him over, some national pride, instead of behaving like a thuggish backyard.
And likewise, for Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo, if the Ugandan government felt they had no business being there, there is a way to do it. 9 days and still nothing from either the Kenyan authorities or the Ugandan authorities. It's something we'll continue to keep alive here every day until they return home. Now, let's take a break. When we come back, we have lots to talk about happening out on the streets, education, a section of it anyway, higher learning or higher protest, that and much more when we return.
Diriba lukumpiai lukuni piam piam lukumpiai lukudiri diriba lukumpiai lukuni piam 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 lukumpiai lukudiri diriba lukumpiai lukuni piam piam lukumpiai lukudiri diriba lukumpiai lukuni piam piam piam.
Leo zero, kesho zero. Download the Absa Kenya app, open an Absa One account with 0 monthly fees. Bila fees, maisha ni free. Absa, your story matters.
Every Friday, 10 p.m.
Unajua ni kudunda kudojo.
Bigger statue.
Salam. Akufa juu, kila mtu hapa ndani kufa juu.
E for the energy.
E for the vibe.
Say E for the energy. Unaweza nita media messiah Sombor.
Coast Africa's mega hype man, good man.
10 over 10 every Friday from 10 p.m.
Riba lukumpia lukuni piam 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 lukumpia lukudiri diriba lukumpia lukuni piam piam lukumpia lukudiri diriba lukumpia lukuni piam piam.
Venus unveils confidence that captivates with 5 times more hydration. Venus, inspired by nature, perfected by science.
Baadaye anti.
Mkuu, umetufikisha home poa. Asante. Pia wewe pata kakitu ikufikishe home.
Nunua any 2 80-gram Cadbury Dairy Milk Packs ama Cadbury Drinking Chocolate. Visit cadbury.africa uandikie someone special your heartfelt message ya kumshow thanks. T's and C's apply. Cadbury, there's a glass and a half in everyone.
Wrap your whole family in a long-lasting embrace. Our sensory range transforms your daily self-care into sensorial delight. Our men's range is built to elevate your grooming routine. Imperial leather, long-lasting luxury for you.
A painless hard mass on the breast that has irregular edges is more likely to be cancer. However, breast cancers can also present as soft, round, tender, or even painful lumps. Should you notice these signs or any other irregularity with your breast, go for a medical checkup as soon as possible. This message is brought to you by Royal Media Services. We care.
Royal Mabati Factory Limited has exclusive discounts. Deca roofing tiles at 500 apiece and steel trusses at 255 per meter. Enjoy free delivery anywhere in Kenya. Call 0722 638383 or order now at www.royalmabati.com.
This Customer Service Week, we celebrate the heart of Royal Media Services, you. To all our viewers, listeners, advertisers and partners, thank you for trusting us to deliver your business goals to entertain, inform and educate you. We are because you are. Happy Customer Service Week.
$7.2 billion of the amount claimed by the unions was already paid through the normal annual salary increments, leaving only a figure of $624 million as outstanding.
Why can't also they call the union technical team? We sit down with them, they show us how they arrived at 624. They don't want that meeting because they know they are wrong. You cannot claim that you are paid automatic annual increment and you don't have evidence to show. If University X is claiming that they paid this automatic annual increment amounting to 7.2 billion, we want evidence. But you can't come with cooked up figures and you want us to believe.
So the lecturers have been out on the streets going into the 4th week now. Jamila, again, this is over the 2017-2021 CBA.
Yes.
And once again, as with all strikes in this country, we can't seem to decide on the amounts. I will forever remember Sam just talking about how we can't count, and it would seem like, again, there's a dispute over the numbers as we've seen there.
In fact, today there was a meeting between the unions and representatives from SRC and the Ministry of Education in Machakos. But there's been no progress because the lecturers are saying that they do not want SRC in those meetings because of this whole dispute about how much money exactly is in contention here. Of course, we have the unions. You have KUSU, or you have WASU, and you have KUDEIHA. And then you have SRC, and then you have the Ministry of Education meeting to decide exactly what's the way forward. Before we get into the figures, Yvonne, it is important to note that this is the third major strike in less than a year.
Yeah.
It all comes from what we are calling a cobweb of unresolved issues dating back from 2019. At that time, the University's Academic Staff Union and the Inter-Public Universities Council Consultative Forum signed the 2017-2021 CBA. But the cost of that CBA was an issue from the word go. They even went to court. And the government actually lost an appeal this year when they were ordered to pay 7.9 billion shillings. So that's what they were claiming is owed to them from 2017 to 2021. So now the minister comes up and says, no, the amount being owed that is outstanding is only 624 million. It is making a bad situation worse. Because now the WASU and the representatives now are stepping back and saying, no, these are not the numbers. And how is this affecting things, Yvonne? Wanafunzi hawako shuleni. They're not learning. In fact, some of them were talking about how now they're having to spend money on food. They're still having to pay for accommodation. They're still having to worry about their upkeep when they're not studying. So this is a burden on them and also on their parents, because how are you going to make up for almost a month of no classes? There's no backdating hapa. Umelipa chakula, umelipa rent, umelipa all those things. So there's that. And Monica, if it's possible, I was wondering if you could just listen to what the students are saying. There's a student called William Masinde from Maseno and Kevogo Ryan, who's a student leader from KU, who are speaking 1.12 and 1.13 about how this strike is affecting them.
Lecturers should be paid so that we can go back to class, because we are tired of wasting resources that we have been given by our parents. Rent is going at waste, the upkeep is going at waste, and students, we are wasting time.
We students have suffered. We have finished all that we had in our pockets, and we are still struggling with this economic times.
And that's the whole thing. It's not been easy for them, Yvonne. Like, this journey to going to school has been bumpy, to say the least, because we had issues with university funding, the new model that came up. There was even a time that HELB was broke, although the issues now have been resolved a bit. Students didn't even know how much money they're supposed to be paying. Remember the whole banding thing? There were letters that were sent, withdrawn. There were even complaints as late as a month or so ago about students not knowing exactly how much money they're supposed to be paying. So this path to university education the past 2 years has been pretty bumpy for a lot of students. And then now they're unable to continue with classes when there was seemingly some semblance of some normalcy because they're already reported to school. But they're not learning, Yvonne. And these are the same students who are supposed to, one, compete with others in the job market who have gone through maybe the 4 years that they're supposed to without any issues. They are struggling. Now, what are the lecturers saying? We're not going back to class until our money is paid. And this push and pull, Yvonne, is not looking like it's going to end anytime soon. I want us to listen to Constantine Wesonga, the first bite, on the real cost of the CBA according to them, talking about it being 8.8 billion.
From the word go, they insisted that the cost of this CBA was 8.8 billion. And we proved them wrong in court. And we arrived at the conclusion that the cost of the CBA was 16.5 billion.
16.5 billion. And they're talking about the court. I want us to listen to the WASU chair, Lady Grace Nyongesa, about the assertions by the CS that the amount of money is 624 million, 1.5. And then we can listen to her talking about how they're not negotiating. It's the next bite, both by Grace Nyongesa.
Very clear from what was the judgment of the court, what was paid, and what is the balance is very clear.
We are not renegotiating. We are not discussing otherwise. We're only asking for implementation of that CBA.
And Yvonne, this one is looking a bit different. It's not the first one. I remember we had, on 18th of September 2024, lecturers down their tools. At the time, they were demanding negotiation of the 2021-2025 CBA. That strike was called off after 9 days to allow an interministerial committee to steer the negotiation. But the parties did not agree on the cost of the CBA. That issue led to another strike that lasted 26 days. On 23rd of November 2024, the government convinced them to go back to work after it committed to pay the money in 3 phases between 2024 and July 2026. But then that one has not been agreed upon again. That's why they're back on the street. Even this one is looking a bit different because they're a bit more adamant. They're insisting that they're not going to go back to class. And we've been seeing how they've been passing their time. We've seen videos of them playing games. They've been dancing. They're thinking, tutakuwa tu hapa, tutakuwa tuna report, but we're not going to go to class. So even this is looking a bit different.
Yeah, and at the heart of all of these, I mean, and you've given us a good breakdown of just this year alone, but since 2017, various strikes, and each strike is about a particular CBA, that's collective bargaining agreement. In 2017, it was about the 2013 to 2017 CBA. And so the question now emerges about why implementation of CBAs is so problematic in Kenya's industrial sector, and it has been, for years, not just in the education sector, in health, in so many others, even with civil servants. Are they done in good faith, or does government use them to kick the can down the road? Are they honest in the negotiations? I mean, in certain instances, the negotiations take so long that you are implementing a particular CBA right in the middle of the cycle. There's always dispute between government and unions, as we're seeing now, over the exact figures. There's the disobedience of court orders, the negotiation process. And in many instances, some of the problems, maybe it's lack of political will, budgetary constraints, where a government makes a promise knowing full well that this is something they're not going to be able to achieve. And then, of course, there's also the conflicting figures we've talked about, the shifting of blame. And then you've got, legal roadblocks. Ministry of Labour will rush to court, or the particular ministry will rush to court. That strike will be declared illegal. And then it's the back and forth. There have been accusations, and indeed, in some cases, it's been true about ignoring court orders. And then the other issue about, implementing the CBAs is not just necessarily down to the amounts of money. It's also about unremitted statutory deductions. Many of these then find that their statutory deductions were not remitted on time. The negotiating process of these CBAs is flawed from the start, with one person having an upper hand. And I don't know if at some point it does speak to the erosion of the power that trade unions have, or perhaps once had, in this country. Infighting within trade unions weakens their collective bargaining power. I mean, this is something you see in various sectors of education. Now with lecturers, you see it with, lower sectors of education. That's primary school, that's secondary school, teachers, doctors and nurses, clinical officers, nurses. We have a problem with collective bargaining agreements. And, when you hear about it, sometimes it sounds very technical. We want this CBA implemented. In fact, right now, they want this current CBA implemented, the 2017-2021, and they want to begin the negotiations for the next cycle, because that's where we are. And so just what does this say about how we negotiate in this country? Sam?
It's rather unfortunate that we have to, every so often, get to this situation where workers are fighting with their employers. And of course, it gets so complicated when you're talking about different agencies involved. If you are to talk about health, then you're talking about 2 levels of government, different unions that are involved. And one wonders, how will this end? Because previously we've seen strikes stretching for several weeks. Then eventually you see meetings starting to happen, and eventually meetings at State House. So with this lecturers' strike, is it waiting for an appointment at State House so that then there can be a bit of talk to say that you have agreed that all these issues will be resolved with immediate effect, And indeed, we are committing ourselves that the negotiations for the next CBA should start early as now, so that you don't have challenges. I mean, if you're to reflect on what happened just recently with the teachers' meeting, teachers' leadership in State House, I think there were about 10,000 teachers representing the teaching fraternity, and some of the commitments that we had, one wonders, why is it easy to hold a meeting one afternoon at State House, get a lot of concessions, get a lot of directives to different agencies and chairpersons or different committees to go ahead and implement what the president has said, but it is so difficult to engage an educated lot, because I think some of the most educated people teach in our universities. Why is it that we're still dealing with these issues if it's not urgent? Because look, as Jamila says, learners have been in school for more than 3 weeks now. They've not been taught. What does this do to the quality of education? What does it do to our name out there? How seriously do we be taken? If you can have first years who sat their KCSE last year in 2024, the results were released. We were told that 246,000 of them have qualified to join the universities. We saw the struggle with applications. I think there's a sizable number, tens of thousands, that did not even apply for placement with COOPs. When they eventually report, remember in previous years there's been challenges with accessing help. This time around we are told that help is working so hard to an extent that most of them are now getting their help resources. As soon as everything appears to be working when it comes to the side of financing of their programs, they are in school, they've received the help allocation, but there's no one to teach them. Where do they go? What do they do with their time? When I was in Kilifi recently at Pwani University, and I saw those learners, the lecturers had already taken their break to go and protest the challenges they're facing. And you could see students sitting around different structures within the university. What were they doing? Each of them was on their phone and earphones to their ears. They're in their own world. They're supposed to be at the university to learn, to exchange ideas, to learn from each other, to socialize, to become people that are ready to serve not just the country but the world. For 4 weeks, close to 4 weeks now, they've not been engaged in any of those. They've not been exchanging any ideas. Imagine if your first year, the last time you saw a book was in November last year when you're preparing for your final paper. What are we telling these young people? And as you talk about the quality of education, because we're working so hard to implement the competency-based education, but what are we doing to our university education? At a time that every other time you hear the government reviewing and saying there are certain programs that are being taught that should not be being taught, there are universities that do not have the right manpower to teach because we want people with PhDs. When you have a university like my university, when the government is saying that there's an overpopulation, there's more lecturers than we need, so we need to resize, we need to rationalize. Is that what they call it? Rationalize the manpower and declare redundancies. And part of those redundancies are talking about people who are very experienced, PhDs and professors that you now feel as a government you no longer need in those universities. So the grievances are as many as there are employees or as there are universities. So every institution has its own unique challenges. But who is suffering? It is the learners. It is these more than 500,000 learners that are in the universities. They're supposed to be being taught. They're supposed to be learning crucial ideas on how to save this country. We're just close to Vision 2030 in 5 years' time. One of our key issues to consider is the manpower, the human capital that is the best in Africa, as we are told by different reports and different speakers. How do you ensure that human capital continues to be the best if you have to look at some of those pictures? And I saw, it looks funny, seeing the lecturers do the dance, wear clothes that are not theirs. I don't know who dresses them. But yes, those are the pictures. I mean, he's supposed to be busy doing research or delivering lessons in class, but they're not doing that. And a country is not even moved to an extent that we're having meetings that are not resolving anything. What are we supposed to tell these learners? A semester is about is it 13 to 16 weeks? We've done 3 weeks, remaining with 10. In those 10, at the minimum, they're supposed to learn, to sit for their continuous assessment, to sit their projects, whether it's their term papers or whatever it is, and also sit an exam and prepare to go home. Those that have in advanced years, they're supposed to go for attachment. So if they come here for internship, what would they be practicing? If the person who was supposed to prepare them for the industry was on the streets doing what they should not be doing.
And you know...
Look, Sam, I think you are describing the footage we are seeing there of the
clothes that are not
yeah.
theirs. Yeah. That's your interpretation.
Yeah, and you know, there's this
2025.
There's this yet to be concluded issue of search for a national dress. And I think it's going quite literal there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
you need dress imeenda shule.
Yeah. Here is a key concern: the absence of urgency in addressing this is something that should be found disturbing. We've had strikes before, but we've normally seen authorities move quickly to engage and bring that to an end in the interest of the learners especially, and in the wider interest of national interest itself, because education is a national interest. Some you speak about our human resource attributes as a country. This affects it. And we export a lot of very, very experienced and well-read people out to the region. You go around the region and you find Kenyans doing great works out there. They come from these universities. But certainly this is not sending a very good message even to those potential employers watching out there, because we are delivering an impression of instability in the education sector. And it's quite disturbing. Earlier on, Yvonne, you spoke about the efficiency of the trade unions. I think the likes of Tom Mboya are actually nodding their heads with approval when they watch at least the trade unions that are representing university lecturers. They have been very, very efficient. And remember, the efficiency of trade union is measured by how successful a strike is. And how successful a strike is measured by how disruptive it was. And for the last 21 days, we haven't had any learning in public universities, because basically the trade unions, UASU, is having their say here. And they are having it in a very strong way. They have been able to paralyze learning in universities in order to force the government's hand in meeting the demands that they have put in place. And lastly, the issue of this CBS. When can CBS stop being pieces of paper?
Yeah.
Do governments, and I say governments because the last 3 governments have actually had to deal with major strikes, some involving teachers, others involving university lecturers. And it always comes down to the non-compliance on the part of government. And when the CS came up and disputed the amounts, you know, that 7.9 billion has already been paid. I mean, 7.9 billion shillings when it's paid out is not small money. Surely lecturers can locate that either in their pockets or bank accounts if it had been paid. So I think both sides just need to weigh the gravity of this, the impact it has on the future of our learners, and also the impression it's creating of instability in the education sector. The country cannot afford this, and it should not be let to continue beyond now.
Yeah, you know, I think the sad thing for me with every time we continue to have strikes and complaints about something as basic as salaries, right? And something as basic as an agreement, like you say. If an agreement is signed, it should be honored. But have you noticed how we focus on salaries, which is important? But I think because we are so stuck around this, because government cannot seem to ever resolve this issue, we fail to focus on something, a very other important aspect of universities, and that is conducting research. If we can barely even pay the salaries of lecturers, how much money are we even going to be able to put into research? And remember, universities are centers of research for science, for innovation, for greater understanding, for solving national, global problems. And of course, on that front, there's been a significant drop in the funding for research in various universities. I think about 0.8% of the country's GDP is spent on financing research. There is an organization called the National Research Foundation, I believe, and even they had their funding, the National Research Fund, they had their funding significantly reduced. Now, here's the thing. We can never really move to having the bigger conversations and the bigger picture conversations that will move this country forward, like research and innovation amongst our academicians and our scholars, if we are still not able to resolve things as basic as salaries. This is how other countries have developed in the West. This is how they've done it in the United States, in China, in Europe, where universities are constantly looking for new ways to solve the challenges of the nation. We aren't even having that as a big discussion because we're still stuck with salaries. Gross, is it 7.2, is it 7.9? Has it been paid, hasn't it? And so we just find ourselves still stuck in this whirlpool, while we could be thinking much bigger and doing quite a bit with those university lecturers who shouldn't be dancing like we're seeing, who should be in labs, who should be doing research papers, who should be the ones innovating, not just for Kenya, but for the world. But if they're still busy asking for gross net 7.9 billion tunamalizana tunaanza na 2025, 2029, we're a very long way from developing in this country if these are the basic fights we're having.
And look, Yvonne, the one thing we need to do, we've seen how government is proud of saying they have paid their foreign debt on time. It's an expression you see from the CS Treasury. We have not defaulted. There's a lot of pride in being on time with the Eurobonds. Yeah. We're even borrowing to pay our foreign debt.
Our debt, yeah.
We need that same government pride when it comes to domestic obligations. Yeah. And these obligations range from salaries to even pending bills of local contractors out there who are owed monies for many, many years. We need to see the government also sounding very proud that we have paid our lecturers, we have paid our nurses, we have paid our contractors who are owed money, so that it's not just this pride that we express when we settle the installments of our foreign debts.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the unfortunate thing, and I think as a country we have to seriously think about how we want to manage our public affairs, because how is it that the challenges that we've been facing, even if you have to look at the competency-based education, there has been a serious struggle on the public front. And there are examples to cite, and there are results to see. Because of underinvestment, non-consistent investment in public education, we're having challenges even in outcomes in national examinations. Again, 2 weeks ago, while we were in Kilifi, you will see that KCC results, 72% of the class scoring D+ or below. When you look at what's happening in the institutions, you're seeing institutions, if it's junior school or even secondary schools, that are still struggling with basic infrastructure, whether it's the classrooms or the science laboratories and equipment. Now, you transition from that, having worked so hard, you have an opportunity to join a public university to go and pursue your higher education. You get to a university, and those are the challenges you're witnessing. Now, what alternatives exist? The alternative is private university. What is the cost of the private university? It is extremely expensive. Yeah. How then do you resolve inequality in our country if you're not serious about our public institutions? Yeah. Because remember that education is a public good. And there's been this conversation, I think it was one of the American presidents talking about coming up with a private solution to a public problem. Yeah. It shouldn't be the case. Yeah. Parents should not have to go so deep into their pockets to afford an education for their children because the government that collects taxes to finance the same education is unable to do so. We need to get serious to rethinking how do we want children to transition from the moment they join grade 1. Because you don't hear a lot of problems with ECD teachers or ECD institutions, early childhood education, which are largely managed by counties. but at the same time, there could be private institutions. But once a child gets into the public system of education, there's always a problem. Yeah. Do you want to succeed or not? If you continue to collect more than 2.5 trillion shillings worth of taxes, and you're spending 700 billion shillings on education, that is 28% of our revenue or more. But still, you cannot see the quality. Yeah. Children cannot stay in school as they should. University students cannot be in school when they're supposed to be in school. I don't think we're serious. And we must, as a matter of urgency, have that serious conversation and focus on it beyond the politics.
Can you say the same also about health and others?
Correct.
Where the inequalities are stark.
Oh, yes. Unless you go to a private health facility, which is expensive, inaccessible. Yeah. I mean, public health, look at the many Kenyans that are struggling with whether it's...
And the issues you'll see there are the same.
Exactly. Right. Whether it's, do you call them chronic conditions? Yeah. They're required to see a doctor regularly, maybe every month or every 3 months. What journeys have they to walk? You saw the other day when you saw cancer survivors or people that are still treating cancer, having to go on the streets. Like, really, it should be shameful. Yeah. We should be ashamed of ourselves that you can find patients having to hold demonstrations because hospitals are not working or SHA is not functional in certain institutions. Really?
Yvonne,
in a country that continues to collect taxes?
You talk about inequality, and Yvonne, I know this has been said before, but this what you're talking about, the fact that you're unable to afford to pay university fees for your child, there are issues with the basic primary education, there are issues with secondary education, there are issues with hospitals being unable to afford medical care, does not really apply to those in leadership positions, because they're unwell, they go to private hospitals, unable to pay. Their children, the universities don't function here, take your children abroad to study. So this really don't really matter to them. And something that the Wasucha lady said as we take a break resonates in my mind. She said, we deserve dignity in service. We deserve dignity in retirement. You must go back to the village and people look at you with respect that this was a worker at the university. So you're frustrating them. And I mean, even to get to the level of being a university professor took a long time. Ulisoma, ukasoma, ukafundisha, ukaandika vitabu, ukapata PhD, ukakuwa professor. So you're belittling that, number one. Number two, you're making universities inhabitable for students and their teachers. And it's just sad.
Yeah, it is. Linus, as we close, take a break?
No, just the agency. We would like to hear the ministry, from the ministry a bit more, from the CS, because someone has to bring this to a close. And you know what? That someone has to be government. That's the reason governments exist. Governments exist because of the most difficult of the problems that humanity can face. And so this is a major test for CS Ogamba. Let's see how you do this.
That's right. Let's take a break. We come back with our final words for the night.
Diriba, lukumpiai, lukuni piam, piam, lukumpiai, diriba, lukumpiai, lukuni piam, 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 lukumpiai, diriba, lukumpiai, lukuni piam, piam, lukumpiai, diriba, lukumpiai, lukuni piam.
It's big, bigger than you can imagine. It's massive. It's the biggest jackpot. Shabiki Super Jackpot Sahini 100 million. Yes, predict 17 games na 99 bob na ujishikie 100 million. Bonuses ni from 13th correct prediction. Na ukipata zote wrong, usiwori, bado kuna bonus. Hii ndio jackpot. Shabiki Super Jackpot is now at 100 million. To play, download app ya Shabiki on Play Store or SMS SJP to 29063.
Gaming is addictive. Play responsibly. Not for persons under the age of 18. Shabiki.com is authorized and regulated by BCLB. License number BK 0001080.
Friday, 10 p.m.
Unajua ni kudunda kudonjo.
Piga statue.
Salam Konko. Akufa juu, kila mtu hapa ndani kufa juu.
E for the energy.
E for the vibe.
Say E for the energy.
Unaweza niita media messiah Sombor.
Force Africa's mega hype man, good man.
10 over to 10 every Friday from 10 p.m.
Riba lukumpia lukuni piam 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 lukumpia lukudiri diriba lukumpia lukuni piam piam lukumpia lukudiri diriba lukumpia lukuni piam.
You're probably wondering how I got here. This was me. Nimeboeka. Then nikabuy B Lifetime bundle. My 1 hour kuwa online bila wasi. And my time turned from just kawa ikakuwa lit. Nika go live really nice na TikTok, IG, Snap na nikahang na Memorial. Manzo ukiwa na B Live, time is on your side. Hadi beats zina slap different. Nikaanza kuzitoka, nika trend online, kushuka mat tu hivi. Mafans wakatokea, tukajiaji.
Bumping at the crew, express yourself any place una
Buy
go.
the new B Lifetime bundle. Dial *544#.
Baite bwana, baite murume. We wacha bwana. Unanipigia simu saa hii? Si utafanya ninyongwe bwana. Unataka miraa yangu ikatike? Ai bwana murume, hufai kunipeleka na hiyo ongea. Murume unanipeleka na ongea ya gari ni kama imeibiwa bwana.
Dial *811 415# to get Vite as your skiza tune.
Health is not politics, and death is not a debate. Yet in Kiambu County, leaders are busy arguing over numbers while babies die. For more than 130 days now, doctors in Kiambu County have been on strike. That's over 4 months of strained hospitals, absent care, and mothers turned away when they need help the most. During that time, newborns have died. On Citizen TV this week, 2 women told their stories. One whose baby died hours after birth because there was no doctor available. Another whose premature infant struggled for life while her mother was told to personally watch over her baby in the neonatal ICU because there were no doctors to do it. No one weeps like that for no reason. But the county government insists all is well. The governor and his health executive deny any crisis. They even dispute the number of deaths. Oh, it's not 156 or 136 or whatever figure others have quoted. We have reduced a serious matter of death to splitting hairs and quibbling over numbers. So, Governor, what is the right number? How many babies must die before you call this a crisis? Governor Wamatangi, what is the acceptable threshold of death in your county? Because even 1 is too many. When you argue over figures, you miss the point entirely. Governor, you don't get to inflate or deflate grief to suit a political narrative. You don't measure tragedy by arithmetic. Meanwhile, neighboring Murang'a County and Kenyatta National Hospital are overwhelmed by patients feeling Kiambu's paralysis. If services are truly uninterrupted, why are women in labor crossing county lines just to find a doctor? This denial, this stubbornness, is not leadership. It's negligence dressed up as public relations. You know, you don't fix a health crisis with press conferences at state of the county events. You fix it by sitting down with the doctors, by listening, by negotiating in good faith. Because at the end of the day, this is not just about doctors and salaries. It's also about patients. It's about a mother in pain, a baby who can't breathe, a family who loses faith in a system meant to protect them. Governor Kimani Wamatangi, your people are dying, not from lack of medicine, but from a lack of humility. Because somewhere along the way, politics and numbers became more important to you than the lives of your people. And that is the real crisis in Kiambu County. That's my take.
On my kicker tonight, Kenyans have been reacting to the publication of a list of 60 nominees for national awards by the Joint Secretariat of the Parliamentary Honours Advisory Committee. The key word there is honours, but let's continue. The list has kicked up a major storm, especially inside Kenya's vibrant online community. Sections of the media have also greeted the list with outrage, with the Standard newspaper stating without compromise, not our heroes. I sampled a few more of those online and offline reactions to try and find out why the outrage. I noticed that the common thread argued that for most of the listed members of the National Assembly and Senate, there's little to link the national award to the name. What did some of the proposed award receivers do to deserve the listing? Then some Kenyans raised issues with specific names in the honours list. In there, they said, were ex-convicts, shooters, public brawlers, drug dealers, and even wash experts. They offered little in terms of evidence, but I think they made their point. Now, every Jamhuri or Mashujaa Day, the nation pauses to celebrate men and women who have served Kenya with distinction. The president confers national honors, medals meant to recognize exemplary service and moral excellence. But when members of parliament routinely feature in those lists, Kenyans are right to ask, what exactly is being honored? Let's be honest. This parliament is not exactly the temple of integrity it ought to be. From silence during debates to outright absenteeism, to corruption scandals, misuse of public funds, and even political grandstanding, the Kenyan public often views MPs with frustration rather than admiration. So when some of them receive national honors, it raises uncomfortable questions. Is the honor a reward for service or for political loyalty? Is it recognition of performance or compliance? Meanwhile, across the country, teachers teach without resources, nurses have saved lives in understaffed hospitals, and police officers serve with little recognition. These are the true pillars of national service. Yet, year after year, their names are rarely listed in the honors list. National honors should not be political decorations. They should be moral badges, earned and not granted. The Constitution expects leaders to be persons of integrity, serving the people selflessly. When parliamentarians who have faced questions of ethics, mismanagement, or corruption are decorated by the state, that medal itself loses meaning. Honors without honor cheapens the national moral currency. They tell Kenyans that power, and not principle, is what earns recognition. It is time to restore dignity to our system of national recognition. Honors should celebrate service, not status. integrity, not influence, and merit, not membership. Because in a country yearning for honest leadership, the true honor lies not in the medal, but in the integrity of those who wear it. That is my kicker.
On my memo tonight, what message exactly does a government send when its senior representatives take part in political campaigns of a neighboring country? Well, Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen recently crossed the border and campaigned for President Yoweri Museveni in Sebei, eastern Uganda. I'm just wondering, and of course this is just wild imagination, what if President Museveni lost the election? How would the Kenyan government, which campaigned for him in eastern Uganda, relate with the unlikely new president of Uganda? Would it start with an apologetic note verbal? Luckily, Ugandan presidential elections have produced few surprises in nearly 40 years. So the Kenyan government can safely campaign in eastern Uganda. But it was not safe in the Ugandan capital, Kampala, for two Kenyans, Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo, who crossed the same border to support opposition leader Bobi Wine. Unlike CS Murkomen, who campaigned for President Museveni, Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo were not safe turning up to support opposition leader Bobi Wine. They were abducted and taken away, and their whereabouts remain unknown. Now, as a regional trailblazer in multi-party politics, Kenyan campaigns in Uganda would have been laudable if it was about exporting the good and not our bad manners. The Kenyan campaign team in eastern Uganda shamelessly fronted ethnic ties to a local community there, the Sebei. It was a region-specific assignment inspired by ethnicity, not ideology. It was such a Kenyan outing. One speaker even told the Sebei crowd to support Museveni now and in 2027 to return home and vote for President Ruto. And yet, if there was anything to discuss in Uganda, it should not have been the politics of tribe. It should have been the politics of principle. The conversation could have risen higher to trade, governance, or regional integration. In fact, colors should have been a uniting factor. The yellow of UDA and the yellow of NRM could have been a starting point for ideas. But instead, we reduced the cross-border moment to a neighborhood affair, an ethnic performance dressed up as politics. And why didn't the Kenyan campaign experts explore, say, the Buganda region, where President Museveni's opponent holds sway? Meanwhile, as Murkomen's team campaigned freely in eastern Uganda, the two other Kenyans disappeared in the west, the only mistake being on the opposition side of Uganda's political divide. The irony? The same cabinet secretary who crossed the border unbothered to come for one side now heads the ministry that should be asking what happened to the two men who crossed to campaign for the other. Sometimes our politics is not just careless, it's cruel in its contradictions. Because if it was right for Murkomen to campaign for Museveni, then surely it cannot be wrong for Njagi and Oyo to support Bobi Wine. Democracy doesn't stop at the border, neither should accountability. In biblical terms, this is an invitation to Interior CS Murkomen, who campaigned in eastern Uganda, to be a brother's keeper for Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo, who campaigned in western Uganda. And that is my memo.
It's been nearly 2 weeks since the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission restarted the continuous voter registration. During that time, the trips to registration stations has been low. We have listened to Kenyans. There are those who see the essence of registering and those that have given up on that important step to joining the high table of decision-making in our democracy. But wait, have we understood how consequential such a move would be? I look at the Constitution of Kenya that has defined our aspirations for the last 15 years, and in it, you will see the word democracy mentioned 6 times. At every mention, it is followed by words like social justice, participation of the people, regular free and fair elections, human rights, rule of law, and more, largely recognizing the importance of human dignity and the voice of each one of us when public decisions are being made. However, there are constitutions and then there are politicians. They come in many colors, but mostly they are defined by interests. And those interests can vary in as many ways as there are politicians. Sometimes those interests are ethnic, or is it tribal? They are economic, or is it commercial? Sometimes financial, but mostly about preserving power, however small in scope. And recently, we have seen the political class retreat to their interest cocoons to scheme on how best to capture seats in the upcoming by-elections. We have seen some candidates bought off, ceding space for alternative candidates. In some, we have seen a political party negotiating with aspirants to step down in exchange for government jobs and cash awards. We have also seen some candidates stepping down to preserve the pride of some kingpins in some regions. In all those concessions, the people have come at the end to listen to the decisions of men, yes, men, not women, who, after careful consideration and wide consultations, have decided to back the candidature of Mr. X. Quite democratic, isn't it? And so when you hear some young Kenyans saying they will not bother to register or even vote since there is nothing they can change, you may begin to understand where they are coming from. Yet Kenyans, we have so much power in our hands, more than we like to believe. Imagine in the year 2022, less than 7.2 million Kenyans decided the presidential election. A whole 8 million Kenyans were registered but did not take part in that general election. Nobody knows what their aspirations were or are. Today, IEBC targets to register another 6.3 million Kenyans who have been issued with identity cards. Even if IEBC were to succeed to register all of them, it will make no sense if they don't participate in the next general election. At a time political parties and loose alliances scheme to predetermine the outcomes of the upcoming by-elections, it may seem a system already rigged to the disadvantage of Kenyans. But there is hope. How about getting involved, including in those political parties, to stamp the authority of Kenyans in how they are governed all the way from the community level to political parties and the institutions of governance? You see, collectively, we have so much knowledge. At individual level, each of us knows something. Each of us has an idea of what the right thing to do should be. Each of us knows which road requires attention. Each of us knows something about our health sector, even if nobody asks. Each of us, indeed, makes a decision on what to eat, when to eat, where to eat, and with whom. How about taking the future of our country seriously? And if you cannot listen to me, perhaps you could listen to an elder.
Gentlemen, if you just hang around and don't register, you are useless. No, true. You can't be useful. You can't be any use because you are not participating in the development of Kenya. And if you are hanging around just eating, I mean, surely you can't be very meaningful or useful at all.
Be useful. That's my sense tonight.
right. Be useful. Today, let's be useful and end this show today on this side of the day, right?
You want to hear what the viewers have to say?
Yes,
please. So one of them is saying, I'm fully into the news gang. This is John from Siaya. This is a very good move by the World Bank. And I think going forward, the youth will have a brighter future. Another one is saying, the strike by lecturers is not only punishing the students, but also the parents who have borrowed money to pay for their learning. What I can't understand is that the dons and government officials are quite learned. Why are they talking different CBA agreements? If the state can promise millions for gold winners and give churches millions, then why can these be given to the lecturers? Another one is saying that I went to Matungulu sub-county, Machakos, registrar's office to replace my lost ID card after the president announced it's free. But to my shock, they said we have to pay since they have not received any letter from their bosses. And so much more. And I think that last point reminds me that all presidential decisions or directives must be written with the seal of the president. And if there's a regulation that requires IDs to be charged, an amendment needs to happen.
Yeah, indeed.
A simple announcement will not change things.
No.
Because the public officers managing registration or replacement of IDs, they work based on documents, not sound clips.
Soundbite.
Yes, not soundbites.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tuliona kwa TV.
Tulisikia kwa radio.
Tulisikia. Ilisemwa.
Na nani?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The only thing that can take effect is if there's a concession not to run. There's another feedback thing. The whole university system needs relooking. This is Peter Omondi. Some courses can be done effectively online. We need practical lessons that are in line with what industry needs. Professors too need to look at how they approach things. That's Peter Omondi.
I have Dr. Philip Chebunet, who's the Secretary General of WASU, University of Eldoret. He's saying, we're in Machakos today, a technical team between unions and IPU-CCF has been formed to dispel the SRC figures, that's what he's saying, who are not saying the truth, and present the report on Monday to the Joint National Implementation Committee before presentation in court on 15th of October. And then tomorrow, they start discussing the 2025-2029 CBA. That's from Dr. Chebunet, who's the SG of WASU, University of Eldoret.
So that's where things stand. Hopefully, by the time we're here again next week, this should have been resolved and learners are back to school.
And hopefully, by the time we have the next show, we find Njagi.
And
that too. They need to come back home. Safe and sound. Let's end it there for now. That's the one thing that doesn't need a seal. We can end it by a sound clip, and that sound clip is mine saying this. This show is done. Thanks for watching.
Happy Mazingira Day.
Yes, Liz Otieno is our sign language gangster tonight. It's good to have her with us.
Karibu, Liz.
Yes, Liz, welcome. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Yes, thank you. And congratulations. All right, so let's leave it there. Have a good week. Happy Mazingira Day. Plant a tree. Panda miti. Yeah.
And happy Moi Day.
And happy Moi Day, yeah, if you still do. Yeah.
This Customer Service Week, we celebrate the heart of Royal Media Services, you. To all our viewers, listeners,